Great.
Thank you
And I
so
will
much,
hand
Neil.
over to you. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
Brilliant. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Yes, my name's Sarah Hearn, and I am here to represent Oxford and Assessment. We are a University of Oxford spin-out company, which was launched a few years ago to take the sort of decades of research carried out by our founders, Maggie Snowling and Charles Hume, out into the public space, into something that schools could use. They are, and their research has been focused around the development of language and early literacy. So that's sort of what our company was founded to do, is sort of create assessment tools and intervention programs to support early language and literacy development. So part of the reason that I'm sort of here and able to speak to you today is because there is a Welsh government funded project called Calon, being led by Bangor University over the next 3 years to sort of transform and introduce a programme of language and literacy support across Wales. So at Oxford, we're really pleased to be partnering with Bangor as part of this project. And our role in this will be to provide access to our language and literacy tools, one of which is LanguageScreen, which is obviously what I will be training you on today and will be the focus of the Bridgend project. Although we do also have a whole class language program, which is forming part of the Calon rollout, and there's also a language and literacy program called RIL. That's just a very sort of brief background, just so that you kind of have a little bit of context as to kind of why I'm here today. But the focus is obviously LanguageScreen. I'm really delighted that Bridgend is going to be rolling out LanguageScreen this year, and I will, without further ado, move on to tell you a little bit about the tool. And I should say, I suppose, that maybe just thinking about how to take questions, perhaps if there are any questions, you can pop them in the chat. And if
I'll pick those up, Sarah, and come
you'll
in
pick
then.
them up. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Okay, great, thank you. And obviously, if there's anything that comes up later, we can follow up. But that's great. Thank you, Neil. Okay, so there will be a really sort of practical element to this training, but I thought I would just start. I don't know how much everyone knows about LanguageScreen, so I just wanted to start with a little kind of brief on kind of what it is. So LanguageScreen is an online assessment tool. The purpose of it is to get a really quick, objective, accurate reading measurement of a child's oral language abilities. In terms of how it's administered on a kind of one-to-one basis, so one adult per one child, over the course of between 5 and 12 minutes. It is carried out using either a mobile device, like literally a mobile phone, but better would be a tablet for a slightly bigger screen, or you can also use a laptop or a computer as well. In terms of the kind of age range that it's suitable for, it's suitable for children aged 3 up to sort of early secondary school, actually, but obviously I know this is a primary school project. And you don't need any kind of specialist training really to use it. I mean, this has obviously been set up just to kind of get you really comfortable. But the point is, you don't need to be a sort of a speech and language therapist or someone with a kind of degree in linguistics or anything like that. It's been designed, the whole purpose of it is that it's putting the tools in educators' hands to be able to get a quick and accurate reading of their children's language abilities to help them prioritise intervention, either whether that's in-house within the school or whether that's sort of referrals out to specialists. So one of the reasons reasons that there's that kind of broad age range of suitability and that sort of variability in length of time that an assessment can take is because it's been designed to be age adapted and ability adapted. So the version of the test that the children will receive will vary slightly depending on their age, so that it's sort of most appropriate for them. And there are discontinuation rules in place. So if a child is kind of repeatedly getting items incorrect, then the test or the sort of the subtests within the assessment will end early, just for the purposes of making sure that that child doesn't need to kind of sit through any more of the assessment than is necessary for them. And so we, as I mentioned at the start, we're a University of Oxford spin-out company. We very much come sort of from the research world. So it's very important to us that our tools are validated. So we validated LanguageScreen against existing language tests carried out by speech and language specialists. And it was found to correlate really highly with each other. So we're really kind of confident in the validity of the results. We've designed the test to be as objective as possible. There are some tests out there that require a little bit more sort of nuance and some sort of more observational components, and those assessments completely have their place in this sort of space. But for the purposes of this test, we want it to be as objective as possible. So every child is getting exactly the same assessment. So you can really make a kind of fair comparison in their abilities. That's our goal with LanguageScreen. And we provide a standardized score. So what this means is you get both a raw score. So, you know, they answered 8 out of 15 correct. That's useful to an extent. But what that doesn't tell you is, okay, but is 8 out of 15 a good result for a child of 5, or is it a bad result for a child of 5? So that's where the standardized score comes in. So we have screened now over 750,000 children with LanguageScreen, or sorry, 750,000 assessments have been conducted with LanguageScreen, and this is all feeding into the data pool on which this standardization is based. So what that means is whenever you make run a LanguageScreen assessment, the results that you're getting are being standardized against a sort of pretty huge and continuously growing national data set of children of the same age. So it's kind of really giving you that accurate result. And we do have a published paper kind of just showing how LanguageScreen has been developed, if you are interested in reading a little bit more about the background of the assessment. So in terms of what you will be actually assessing, so there are 4 subtests within LanguageScreen, looking at expressive vocabulary. So the children see a series of images and they are asked just to name those images. So it's testing their ability, their sort of naming ability. Then there's a listening comprehension assessment where they hear a series of stories and they're asked sort of both inferential and kind of factual questions about them. There's a receptive vocabulary task where they hear a word and then they see 4 pictures and they have to match the word that they've heard with the picture, the correct picture. And then there's a sentence repetition task where they hear a series of sentences of increasing length and complexity, and they're asked to repeat those sentences back. I get a lot of questions about this because it sounds like it's just a memory test, but actually in order to kind of repeat a sentence back, you are having to sort of reformulate it using your own skills in sort of sentence construction and grammar. So it is a really good assessment of understanding of grammatical structure. I've shown you the Welsh version of the test there. We do have the test obviously in English and Welsh as well. I'm not actually sure whether the purpose of this project will be to assess in English or Welsh or both, but those options are there for you. I should have said at the start that there is absolutely no data scoring or data entry required as part of the assessment process. So all of the scoring is kind of, there's scoring guidance built into the assessment, so you know exactly whether an answer should be considered correct or incorrect. And you kind of mark it as you go through, and then you upload at the end, and then that's it. There's no kind of further data entry required after that point. As soon as an assessment is uploaded, you can log into the Oxford portal, and the reports will be there ready for you. And how those reports will sort of break down is you get some explanatory information at the start, then you get a results summary table, which shows all of your children that you've assessed in kind of one list. And then underneath that, you have an individual results page for every child, which just kind of breaks down their results a little bit in a little bit more detail. And is sort of separable. So you can basically pull it out and share that individual page with parents or speech and language therapists and so on. So this is an example of a sort of a results summary table. So you can see there's a sort of row for every child, and the bits that I've got highlighted here are the standard scores that those children have achieved. This list is ranked in order of standard scores, so the children at the top are the children who've had the lowest scores. And this is just to help make it really clear that those are the children that would most benefit or most likely benefit from having some additional sort of targeted intervention for language. And to make it even easier, we've also added in some red, amber, green ratings or sort of symbols, which again just really help you to kind of make those kind of priority decisions on who to allocate support to if you do have sort of language intervention plans within your school. And then this is an example of an individual results page. As you can see, you've got both the standard score and the raw score there. That's what the RS stands for.
Sarah, can I
yes.
just pause there for a second? There's a couple of people who's mentioned about seeing the screen. I'm able to see your screen. Okay, just want to double check if that is the case for others on the call. So a couple just put in the chat, I couldn't bear to log back in, and then it worked. If others just give a thumbs up if everybody can see okay. I don't think there were any other comments, so maybe those who can't. Thank you, and thanks, Neil. Fab, thank you. Okay, so if there are others maybe who are having difficulties, maybe just logging back off and logging back in. Apologies for that. It is being recorded, so if you do miss anything, obviously you can pick it up in the recording. Thanks for that, Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. Yes, I will move on from there. Okay. And I guess this is so the sort of standard way that you would use LanguageScreen, I guess, in a typical year would be ideally that you would, oh, sorry, is someone asking a question? Oh no, I can just hear some audio. Is typically that you would use LanguageScreen right at the start of the year. You would screen your whole sort of cohort of children. You would then have your report, which would allow you to see which children would benefit most from having sort of intervention support. If you have intervention support in place within the school, that could then be sort of delivered. And then the idea is that you would reassess with LanguageScreen at the end of the year or towards the end of the year. And that would allow you to see how that work that you've done over the course of the year has helped to kind of move the needle for those children. And this is, I know this is a little while off, and actually you may be sort of just for this year delivering in a slightly different way. But if you were to screen a child more than once, you would then be able to see their kind of scores sort of right next to each other, and then you would be able to see the kind of the movement within that group. And as I mentioned at the start, LanguageScreen is suitable for children from nursery right the way up through primary school. So ideally you would be doing this every single year and kind of really building up that picture of the children's language abilities as they move up through the school. So it's really useful, especially that kind of end of year language screener, because especially if you've delivered some sort of intervention during the year, that sort of that sort of list, that table of language scores may have really moved around. So the children at the start of the year who needed the most support may be different from the children at the end of the year who need the most support. And so kind of going up into that next year group, it's really helpful having that data to kind of pass on up to the teacher in the next year so that they can then plan their provision as well. Um, and we can talk more about that uh, depending on your plans for this year. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. I saw someone mentioned the slide with EAL children. Yeah. That was just, I did skip over that, but that was just to say that I sometimes get questions about this sort of example list of a class, because people say, well, look, it's really nice that you've got 3 children with red, 3 children with amber, and then the rest green. But my class, doesn't look anything like that. We've got a huge number of children that are sort of either red or amber, especially in places where there are a large number of EAL children. And that's just to say that that's completely expected, and that's completely okay. This is an example class. It's not a real class. The purposes behind this kind of reporting structure is just to really help you to prioritize whatever resources and provision you have available within your classroom. We absolutely advocate for children, EAL children, to be included in oral language provision. We have data from our research trials to show that EAL children benefit just as much from oral language intervention as children with English as their first language. We are actually, as a company, kind of relatively sort of agnostic to the causes of sort of language delay. Whether that's, because a child has developmental language disorder, or whether it is because they are just, new to the country and have just started learning English, those 2 children will both benefit from receiving language intervention and support. But yeah, I understand that there will be some classes where, actually 70% of that class will be red and amber rather than sort of the other way around. Okay, so I'm moving on to kind of the practical aspect now. I just thought maybe I could pause in case there are any specific questions about anything that I've just covered, that anyone wanted to put in the chat. I can sort of spend a couple of minutes doing that before we kind of move on to the how rather than the why. Otherwise, we can take that sort of offline and do it later.
I know there was earlier on in the chat a question around data protection. So I know kind of that's been answered, I feel, by Kevin as well. So thanks to that for Kevin and Chris. But I am looking into this as well. Chris, was that a hand there come up? I just saw as it go back down.
Yeah, only quick, Neil. I said, yeah, it answered the question. As soon as there's pupil data in there, obviously we do need a DPIA, but obviously the local authority will need one, because I think Gail's idea of drawing down data to look at the local authority-wide trends and patterns would mean that the local authority would need one. And if we've got to do it as well, would it be possible then to have a copy of the local authority's DPIA as well as part of that? Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay. Any other questions? Just I'm looking now at messages. Do you have to screen all pupils or only the ones you were concerned about?
So I would highly recommend screening all pupils. The reason being that language difficulties can be really difficult to spot and more difficult than people think. This is actually one of our kind of, sort of really important messages as a company, is that language difficulties are sort of can be quite well hidden. And so for us, it would be sort of a really strong recommendation to screen as many children as you can. Obviously, I know that you're working within sort of quite, restricted time and so on. But certainly at the start of the year, screening as many pupils as you can to kind of get that really clear picture across the classroom would be what I would recommend. If you were then going to deliver some intervention and then sort of rescreen at the end of the year, you could then maybe just rescreen the children who've received intervention and sort of, you know, a selection of other children who maybe just missed out on having some intervention, so that you kind of have that comparison. But certainly at the start of the year, it would be really recommended to screen as many children as you can. And it is quick. I mean, when I was carrying out LanguageScreen assessments as part of kind of research trials, and this was when it was sort of 10 to 15 minutes for each assessment, because we hadn't sort of introduced the discontinuation rules at that point. I was kind of screening a class of children in a day. That was, you know, me just sitting there and doing child after child after child, like throughout the course of the day, which I know isn't necessarily going to be the way that you'll be able to do it. But it is relatively quick.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Couple of comments. Kevin's just come in there as well. Would have to be signed up with the data protection officer before uploading any data, etc. So again, I'll obviously pass on information about this as well following the meeting. Wouldn't this be the same as the one we have must have for LanguageLink? Is it such a similar system? And again, I think what we've asked, obviously we understand the schools do something similar, and obviously this is something which has come through the local authority. I think from this perspective, what we're doing, trying to get a consistent kind of program in use so that we can kind of utilize that data, not for any comparisons, and again that's kind of been emphasized within the information that's been circulated prior, but for us to look at potential support and guidance going off the back of this. We've had conversations with Central South Consortium about offering some bespoke support from a local authority perspective. Sorry, it's coming off the about the TPIA. Okay, there seems to be a few comments coming in there about the data protection that we already use well, common language links and speak links. Okay, I'll take that response back to Gail as well, so that we can kind of get that kind of formal response out there. I think I was under the impression that kind of that information has been circulated already prior to this. Kevin, is there anything you want to? Do you mean the purpose of the inquiry?
Hi, Neil. No,
Hi, Kevin.
and if something's been shown, I've not read it, my apologies. It's just I'm conscious that, you know, this is, I appreciate there's year fives and such like, but at this point in time, we're talking about reception, who do welcome and language links and speech links, and we already have all these things. So LanguageScreen assessment might be wonderful. I don't mean that as a criticism of it. I just mean as a starting point, it just feels like a duplication because we're already doing these things. So why are we doing another one?
Yeah, and I think that was raised previously as well by some head teachers when it was initially put out. I wasn't privy to those conversations previously, so I will go back to Gail and just get that message out from your perspective and get that response back to you as well. And similarly to the other questions that have come up in the chat as well. Once I share the recording and I have those responses, I will pass those on as well. Are there any other further questions before we move on? No? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Neil. All right, so I have received the sign-up form from each of you guys, from each of the schools that have signed up, which includes your school information and the account owners and admins that should be set up onto the account. So your accounts will be set up on the Oxted portal at some point this morning or later today. So the people that are listed as account owners and admins will each receive an email with a link to kind of sign in and get set up. to the OXED portal, which is the online area where all of the pupil data is stored, and it's basically where you will manage your pupil information, where you will launch assessments from, and where you'll be able to access your reports as well. I'm just seeing a comment about the DPIA. We can make sure that the data sharing agreement is sort of in place before any pupil data is uploaded into those systems. At the moment, the only data that will be in there is the school sort of name of the school, and the sort of account owners will be given access. So I'll just run through the steps on slides, and then I'll do a sort of live demonstration as well. Okay, so the first step is just to, as I said, if you're an account owner or admin that's been included in the sign up form, then you'll be sent an email with a link and login instructions. So you sign into the new school account and you set up your multi-factor authentication. Then you go into your classes tab and you create a class. And then that's when you would when you're ready to upload your pupil data ready for assessing. You can either do this kind of one by one, or the more common sort of approach would be to kind of import your pupils en masse using a template spreadsheet that we provide and that you can download from this area of the portal. Once you have uploaded your pupil data, you can then just pop into the QR codes tab, and this is where you'll kind of see a list of all of the pupils that you have registered with their names, their sort of date of birth and reference number and so on. And importantly, there's also a QR code and a sort of a three-word a code reference for that particular child. And that's it. That's the process that's involved with kind of getting ready for your assessments. Once your data's in, you're ready to go. So LanguageScreen operates just on a browser, just like any other kind of web page. So you can, if you wanted to have a look at it sort of now, while we're on this call, you can use your mobile device to scan that QR code that's on the slide, or you can go to webapp.oxedanassessment.com/languagescreen. Obviously, we'll be sending these slides out later as well, so you can have a look later. There is a practice assessment option within the language assessment. So I would always recommend having a go at a practice assessment first, just before you kind of sit down with any children, just to make sure that you're kind of really familiar with the instructions and the order of the subtests and the scoring guidance as well. You can kind of flick through and make sure that you're happy with what's a kind of right and wrong answer as you go through. And then you're kind of ready to sit down and do a real assessment. So the way that I would recommend doing this is if you're essentially logged in to the OXED portal on the device that you're then going to use to do your assessment, then you can do it this way. So essentially you log in the way that we just saw. You go to your QR codes tab, you go to the child that you want to assess, and you click the blue Launch LanguageScreen button. And that will essentially just open LanguageScreen as a sort of web browser page in a separate tab, and then you're kind of ready to go. The reason I mentioned that little sort of code earlier is because you'll just need to make sure that this matches the code that pops up within the LanguageScreen assessment. That's just an extra kind of fail-safe to make sure that you've launched the assessment for the right pupil, and that the data is going to be uploaded against the right child. So you click that the codes match once you've kind of made that check. As a final check, just make sure you're assessing in the right language. There is a kind of drop down to change between whichever languages you're interested in, but in this context, English versus Welsh. And then that's it, start assessment, and you are ready to go. Now, There is a slightly alternative route to doing this if you are, for example, if you would prefer to print out all of your QR codes and just kind of work from a sort of a printed page, or if you're conducting your assessment on a different device. So for example, you're logged into the Oxford portal on a computer, but you find it easier to assess using a tablet. Then what you would do in that case is you would open the LanguageScreen assessment on the device that you want to assess with, and then you would just use the camera to scan the QR code from either the screen or the printed page that you're working from. So that's a different, it's essentially doing the same thing, but through slightly different routes. And then that's it. The assessment has loaded, and then you are ready to go, ready to assess. Okay, so that was just a quick run through, but now I will do a kind of live demonstration using the actual Oxford portal. So can I just check that you're able to see a new screen now, or should I, oops, maybe I'll just reshare actually.
Sarah, while I was doing that, there's a question coming in. Does the project then signpost or include any resources to work on any difficulties raised, or is it just the assessment and that's it? You go.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So as part of the broader Calon project, we are this year trialing a whole class language intervention. So if there are any schools who are interested in participating in this trial, please let us know, because that would be one way of potentially accessing some whole class language resources. We do also separately, sort of Oxford has a targeted language intervention, not part of the Calon project, but again, if there are schools that are interested in that, let us know. The difficulty with the language intervention, Nelly, is that we only have it in English. We don't have it in Welsh at the moment. So that's just a kind of a sort of a side note.
I think on that, Kevin, as well, is our work potentially with Central South Consortium following the completion of the assessments, looking at the data to see where there are any kind of common difficulties, etc., and then utilising their support as well for schools.
Mm-hmm.
I can see a different screen now, Sarah. Yeah. So it says,
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so this is oxfordanassessment.com, which is sort of the entry point to our portal. So you'll just sign in using the login details that you set up when you first sort of create your account. And I'll just, as I mentioned, you'll need to sort of set up two-factor authentication. So I'll just get my code to log in. You'll only have one school. I had a couple there to choose from, but we'll only have one school. So what I'm doing here is essentially I'm just re-showing you exactly the process that I just ran through on slides, but in the live portal. So I'm already in the sort of the classes tab. I kind of, I mean, you won't have any classes at this point, but I've got to scroll down to the bottom and create class. Name your class and select the year group that that class is and create class. So once you've got your class set up, the next step is to add the pupils into that class. So as I mentioned previously, you can either do this on a sort of one-by-one basis, or you can import them as a group. And the template in order to be able to import this group is just here. So you would download that and then fill that in. I have done one earlier. I'll just show you what that looks like actually. It's not a huge amount of information. So it's just the children's first name, surname, date of birth, with the options given for how this should be formatted in the column name, their UPN, and then additional information here if you have it and if you want to include it. There is guidance there for the format that should be used, but when you import the file, importing. Let me try that again. Oh, that's why. It's because I've got it open now. But when you import the file, if there are any errors in the way that you've kind of formatted the information, the portal will kind of flag where there's an error. So where I've got ticks all along, if there was any kind of error in the way that I'd formatted the information, there would be a kind of warning message and it would tell me what I needed to do to fix it. So I confirm the import. You will get a notification if, I mean, this is a very small number of pupils. If it's a huge kind of import, then it might take a little bit longer. You can kind of close this and come back to it, and you will receive a notification on email saying that the import has completed when it has. So now I've got my little mini class of pupils in my Bridgend reception class. So when I'm ready to start my assessments, I go into the QR codes tab. And this is my list that I mentioned. So there's a kind of sort of section for every child within that class, which has their name and information, a QR code, and a launch language screen button. Right at the top, I've got this practice area for Joe Blogs. So if I wanted to do a practice assessment, I could launch language screen for Joe Blogs, and it wouldn't save any data. If, as I mentioned earlier, you would actually rather work from a kind of printed set of QR codes, you can download a PDF of this page, print it out, and then run it on a separate device and use your camera to screen, as I mentioned earlier. So that's it. If I'm ready to do an assessment, I launch language screen, wait for it to load, check that the codes match, which is a little bit awkward on this while I'm sharing my screen, but usually you could kind of flick back and forth and check that the codes sort of matched the child that I decided to assess. And then I open it. Oh, that's odd. I don't know why it's saying it's not available in any other languages. It's working just before I logged onto this call, so that's interesting. I'll have a look at why it's doing that. But usually here you'd be able to change between English and Welsh. And then that's it. And then you're ready to start the assessment. And I won't run through the whole assessment because it's a little bit sort of, you need to be able to listen to the instructions and so on. But I would really recommend that you kind of go and do a practice assessment, and then you can kind of run through it yourself. There is a little how-to kind of guide at the start here that you can have a look through before you start as well. And we do have a dedicated support email that you can use to contact us as well. I'm just flicking back to my slides again. Oops. There we go. So if you have any questions or any difficulties at all, we have a dedicated support team in place, and you can reach us on calon@oxedanassessment.com for any guidance required at all. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Are there any other further questions for Sarah? And just on the questions that have been raised in conversation and through the chat, I will chase answers for you on all those and get confirmation this week and share within within the presentation and the recording as well. I appreciate, obviously, there are some questions that are coming up. This is very new for us as well as an inquiry project from a local authority perspective. So I do appreciate your patience with that, and obviously being part of it as well for us. So, having so many schools engaged with this is really positive for us. And moving them forward onto years 2 and years 5 then. So just to clarify from our perspective as well, we're providing a 2-week window where we would hope the assessment would be completed. So that's starting from next Monday, the 26th of January, through to the 13th of February, just before half term. And then if those assessments can be completed during that period, so that we can have a chance to assess that data then over the half term break. Who should we let know if we want to engage with further resources or interventions? Is that from kind of engaging with Oxhead, Alice?
Yes, just what Sarah said about if we want to look at the next steps, the resources that would come with it, because I'm really happy to try something new in place of Language Links. We've let that one go, and certainly welcome for the older children. That the resources for that are not ideal for us. So yeah, I'd really like to just work that out, but I can email Sarah directly if there's an address.
Is that the best way forward, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. So I deliberately didn't include anything about sort of our intervention resources here, because it's, at the moment anyway, it feels sort of outside of the scope of the assessment, a kind of focus of this project. But absolutely, usually LanguageScreen would be part of a whole program of support where there is intervention and whole class sort of language support built in. So following your kind of, or sort of based off of the report's results, you would then be using that to decide which children then go on and receive targeted intervention, and the rest of the children would receive whole class support, including those children who are receiving targeted support. So those children at the bottom would kind of have that double dose, and sort of work towards catching up with their peers. So if you are interested in the intervention as well as the assessment side of things, then reach out to us on calon@oxheadassessment.com, and we'll see what options we have available there. It's just that aspect of it sort of sits slightly outside of this particular project, I suppose.
And I can see the message there from Joe. Does that answer your question, Joe, as well? Joe Lewis.
Yes, it does. Thanks, Neil. That's great.
No worries.
Thank you.
It's great that that's where everyone's minds go. It's like, great, we have this information, but now what can we do about it? That's exactly how you should be thinking.
So just one other question.
Are
do you have to pay then for access to the intervention programs, or does the school have to pay extra for access to that?
Yeah, so the intervention sits outside of this. That's sort of what I mean, is it sits outside of this kind of funded project. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
The whole class is part of the Calon project and part of the kind of trials that we're running, but the targeted intervention isn't at the moment. Not for this year.
There was I couldn't see. Sorry, who came in with the other query just then?
Sorry, that was me again. It was just. I was giggling because Welsh Government have said we can do the assessment and that's all covered, but not the intervention, which is kind of, that's a bit tricky. But okay, it's somewhere to start, isn't it? I suppose. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and if I could, whether this is through the chat or whether it's through email after this, if you do have any other queries, please send them through to me, and I will kind of collate those and bank those up and have a response for all as well, so that anything that's maybe at the back of people's minds that hasn't been asked may have been asked by somebody else, and we'll hopefully have those answered as well in going forward. But as I say, the recording will be made available as well. Thank you very much for attending this morning. Much appreciated. I'm just going to stop the recording there. And